Welcome, everyone. As usual, I usually give about 5 minutes for a chance to settle in. I'm glad you're here.
I'm back.
Here with
And
smiling
I don't
faces.
sound like Barry White anymore.
Yeah. Can hear that octave change. That's a good thing. Healing is taking place.
Yes, it is.
That is wonderful.
Still have a few lingering symptoms, but nothing to really speak of. They're
good.
minimal.
That's good.
I've missed you guys on Wednesday.
Yes, we have missed you as well. Right. Not ready to begin. I'm glad I give myself time for others.
Yeah, very good.
Looking at the monitor, recognizing that I prepared the presentation but not opened it so I can use it. So it's a fix. There we go. All right. I have allotted my little 5-minute delay. So we will go ahead and move into the subject for tonight. So glad that all of you are here. We will be looking at, for the month of August, we're going through situational leadership. And so we've looked at the heart of peace and not seeing people as objects, but as human beings. We've looked at restorative leadership and what that means and what entails with that. And this week, we're going to look at our mindset as it pertains to leadership. This idea of change your thinking. There is a well-known author. By well-known, I mean as far as sales and leadership and all of that. His name's Tracy. He has a book called Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. And so many of the things that we'll talk about tonight come from that book, those concepts. But as always, we have hopefully set a standard here that you can take um, the concepts and apply them to personal, professional. So I hope tonight will be no different, that you can take these concepts and apply it to um, leading your family, leading yourself. Leadership does not have to necessarily be you are the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. But we can take those concepts and apply them to different areas. And so that will be what we're looking at tonight with this idea, change your thinking, and looking at our mindset and as it pertains to leadership. So we'll have a check-in here shortly. And then our agenda for tonight is I'll introduce the topic of mindset and positive thinking. And then we'll go into the power of positive thinking, goal setting, and strategic thinking, and taking responsibility for our thoughts. And then we'll wrap that up and let you be on your way. The outcomes that we have lined up for us tonight. Number one, understand the impact of positive thinking on leadership and its effectiveness. Also recognize the role of goal setting in shaping successful leadership behavior. Identify how personal responsibility and mindset shifts drive leadership growth, and develop strategies to cultivate a growth-oriented mindset for continuous personal improvement. So that's what we're looking at for this evening. And to get us started, I have a check-in for us. And check-ins are always fun to get us going. So my check-in is more for me tonight than everyone else, but it'll be helpful. You've got a little bit on the outcomes. You're here in our Wednesday session. You know, we're talking about leadership and mindset tonight. What is one thing? It's kind of like, think of this as you're sitting down to watch a show on Netflix and someone has already picked it. You didn't get to see the little preview of what's about to happen. Now, I'm a person that doesn't bother. However, I live in a household. They really don't like you to start the movie. Some want to see the trailer first. Others want to know the little biopsy, the little biography of the preview. They want to know the plot before they want to find out if they're interested. So I structured tonight's meeting. You know a little bit about what we're getting into. And so the check-in question is, based on what you know, what's one thing you hope you find out about tonight? What's one thing you're hoping is covered or you learn, or you got limited information, but go around. If you give me something, I'm sure I can tie it in. That's our check-in. You're on mute. You did a lot of tapping, but you're still on mute. You tried several times. There you go.
I was mostly talking to myself.
Yeah.
Okay. I missed some of the question because I took the earpiece out. So tell me the question again. Sorry.
The question is, with the little preview that you have of this session night, what's one thing you hope we cover? We're talking about changing your thinking, so you got a limited preview, but based on what you know, I hope at least they cover. That's the question for tonight. That's our check-in.
I hope, this is Andrea. Salutations, everyone.
Greetings.
I hope that the power, the magnificent power of our brains and how they have the power to bring about change that you might not think would be possible otherwise.
Okay, okay. Talking
That's
about
what I
changing
hope.
your thinking. You're hoping we at least touch on the power of the mind,
Yes.
how it can bring about things that maybe we thought were undoable. All right, all right. That's exciting. That's exciting. Anyone else? You got your limited preview. What you got, Clifton?
I hope you cover why it's important. Why is positive thinking important?
Okay, okay. Untapped power, why it's important. Anyone else? Anyone else? Check-in question, limited preview of tonight, talking about changing your thinking, changing your life, leadership. What is one thing you hope we cover?
I missed a little bit of the beginning, but I think that application is for me the biggest thing. So how does that apply in the real world?
Wow, how can we apply what we learn? Oh man, this is wonderful. Talk about a program designed just for its participants. I think you guys asked for each point that I have. There's only 3 points. I think I can tie each one to each point. And I think it's in order of what you guys said. I'll see when the slides come up. But I do believe it is the power of the mind. I can tie to the first point. I can tie why to the second point. And I think the application I usually put towards the end because that's just how I design my presentation. So this will be fun. We'll see how it plays out. But I'm confident. My check-in, just so I'm participating. One thing that I hope I meet all the needs of the people that are here. That's the thing that's what I'm hoping for this evening. So we'll give it a shot and see how it goes. All right, let's get rolling here. Appreciate everyone sharing that. It's a unique check-in, but I'm glad you guys were willing to go there with me. All right, so when we look at changing your thinking, mindset is not just leadership, but it basically shapes who we are. And Brian Tracy in his book says, and change your thinking, change your life. The thoughts that we nurture, the goals that we set, and the responsibility that we take for our actions form the foundation of effective leadership. So as we look at this today, whether we're talking about mindset or goal setting or accountability, it will be helpful not to just, as I said beginning, not to just look at it from a leadership standpoint, but really look at it from a personal standpoint. How are you leading yourself in life? Even if you don't find yourself in a professional leadership position, and really looking at, as was said earlier, why it's so important to be very intentional about the thoughts that we have and why we do what we're doing. So that's what we'll get into tonight. So let's look at the first thing here. There is power in positive thinking. Thought impacts behavior. Positive thinking leads to better outcomes, and leaders shape their reality. So my question to us is, think about a time when your mindset significantly influenced the outcome of a situation. How might a shift in thinking have led to a different result? So you decide what you want to share with the group. We'll make the space as safe as possible, but try not to share things that will have you triggering yourself, as share something that you don't mind being used. But yeah, just think of a situation, a time where this is how you saw it. Maybe as a parent, maybe as a child, maybe in church, maybe at work. And your mind influenced the outcome. And if you thought about it differently or had a different mindset, it may have led to a different result.
Okay, so what came to mind for me was a situation I had as a teacher when I literally caught a guy cheating, and we had to discuss it in the principal's office, blah, blah, blah. And while we're there, I could have come down and been like, 1, 2, 3, this is what I saw, this is what happened. But I took the approach of trying to get him to confess. And so I was more kind of explaining the story instead of telling the story in a way that was more factual. And he definitely did confess to something. He didn't exactly confess why he did it or anything, but he did confess to something. So that was something that, you know, instead of coming hard on him, which probably would have put him in a shell and not said anything, just because this person, you have to have known this person, was not going to do that to his mom and let her see a side of him that she probably would have been disappointed at. So either way, it came out. And even though the outcome did not turn out exactly how I wanted it, but at least I got him to confess.
Yeah, that's good. Appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, it's important. This mindset. You know, we have to be aware that our thought patterns, there are positive thoughts and negative thoughts. And as a leader, or as individuals, we need to be aware of what those patterns are. We have certain patterns contextually, right? So if things are doing well around us, many times people have better positive thoughts. If things are repeatedly not well around us, a lot of times people have negative thoughts. And when you're trying to lead, you have to be aware of those patterns, because those thoughts impact behavior, and behavior impacts outcomes. So negative thoughts can lead to unproductive actions. An example, if I don't think anyone's going to hire me, I'll probably stop looking for a job. If I don't think anyone can love me, I'll probably stop going out to try and find a date. If I don't think I can do math, I'll probably stop trying on the test. So when we look at the power that the mind has, the mind has the ability, and we have control over our thoughts. We don't have the same control over our emotions. Emotions are biological and they are triggered. So you don't decide to get happy or sad or frustrated. Something happens and that triggers a biological response that we call an emotion. But our thoughts are chosen. When someone hits you or talks about you bad or gossips about you, you have no control over what they're doing, but you certainly have control over how you respond to that. Anyone else think of a story that they want to share, the mindset that if they shifted, it could have turned out different? So the converse thought to the negative is the positive, right? So as leaders, when we adopt a positive mindset, leaders and people tend to make better decisions and inspire others to do the same. That works both ways. It says misery loves company. And that's a phrase that we use. But whether positive or negative, the decisions we make impact the people around us, and people are rarely inspired to do bad, right? People hang out with us or like watching us, spiral out of control. But we don't usually think of negative behavior as inspiring. So there are there are some things to keep in mind. Yes, emotions are chemical reactions, absolutely. And so what we want to remember about mindset is that your mindset doesn't just affect you. It's the tone for your entire way of living. So a lot of times we think that this mindset is something that we kind of, it's out there, and whatever it is then affects us. But I want you to consider that your mindset doesn't just affect you. It sets the tone for everybody that's around you. It's how you live your life. And I don't think he needs to recant. It's factual. It is factual. Emotions are chemical reactions. Your body is an engineered machine, and the emotions running fluid, the fluid, whether you want to look at oil or transmission fluid or whatever, those things interact to create energy. And so your emotions have neurological connections that when things happen, there are different endorphins that are released in the body. And that causes an emotional reaction. So emotions are chemical reactions. So he can keep walking the earth and sharing that. However, if he doesn't have the backstory to it, I would encourage him to maybe walk away from that if he can't explain it properly. Just kind of take a couple steps back. But if he hears it, he could nod and say, yeah, I knew that. But I wouldn't recommend the individual stepping out on a stage and trying to explain it. But yeah, so that's good. Appreciate that. Understanding that how we navigate these things with our mindset, it does have a huge impact on the people that are around you. So when you think about, I think all of us know people that are positive and negative. You got people that are fun to be around and people that you're like, when you see their number in the phone, you're like, ooh. That's their mindset. That's, the world is against them. You know, it's that person that you say, hey, how you doing? Good morning. If you say so, it's like, wait, we just walked in. It's just a greeting. Good morning. If you say so, I had a guy that would always respond that way. And it impacted me. When I'm passing people now, walking my dog, I do not say good morning anymore. I say morning. Because this guy would always say, you have no idea what I went through. That's an assumption. He had this whole explanation about, what makes it good. And I bought into that. And it impacted me. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. I'm projecting on other people. I'm coming back at that now. If I see him again, it is a good morning. You're up, you're breathing, and a lot of people didn't make it to that point. So I don't care if you lost limbs and loved ones and just found out you got cancer. It's a rough start to your good morning, but you at least got a morning. So it's debatable. I'll leave it at it's debatable. What one might call good, another might call indifferent, someone else might say. So I'll back off a little bit. But the point of that is to say that if you stick to it enough, those things impact the people around you. Our mindsets are not tied to just us. And so I won't get into in this thing tonight about epigenetics, but you have nurture and nature, right? So you have your genes, which is your biology, and then you have epigenetics, which are tied to your nature. So nature and nurture It's not, and both of them have an impact. When you understand how trauma works, people that are born to people in drastic situations, trauma starts in the womb. That's biblical, that's scientific. You look up any, and so that is the environment that you are born into, and that has an impact. So our mindset in response to those environments are not just tied to ourselves. All right, any thoughts, comments on that? All right. So, goal setting and strategic thinking. So when we look at goal setting and the idea of being effective, when you're a leader, you need to be looking at not just now, but in the future. Yes, you need to know where you've come from, but you do need to have some actionable goals, things that make sense, things that other people can understand. And then you need to have a metric on how you monitor that success. So question for us is, what is one goal that you've set that wasn't achieved as planned, right? You thought it was going to work, but it didn't really go as planned. And looking back, you say, you know what? If I put a little more planning, I probably could have got better results. Anyone have an example of that? Sounded good. It looked good on paper. It's not like you didn't plan it, but didn't really get what you wanted. And you're like, yeah, that could have been fixed if I would have just fill in the blank.
I have run into this problem with income versus expenses on paper. A lot of times it looks like it's completely doable on paper. And then when you're halfway through the month, something has occurred, and none of those figures that were on the paper are there any longer. And so, after years and years of dealing with this, I now make up or incorporate possibilities that may interject themselves into my life so that I can kind of have a cushion to cover that last 15 days of the month. Because it's always around the 10th or 12th where it starts getting really shaky.
Yeah,
And then you're like,
that's
there's a
halfway
lot of
through.
month left.
Yeah, that's halfway through. So that's a good example. That's a good example, because you probably want a plan that extends beyond halfway. Yeah, so that's a good example. Yeah, it made me think of a conversation I had with my oldest daughter. She was in that phase. This was several years ago. You know, first real job, salaried job, tired of the little cars that we've provided, or little, you know, I want a car payment, want a car that runs, want a car payment. And she ran her numbers on paper, like you said, and everything looked good on paper. And so I said, yeah, you probably want a better, you know, you want to look at this more strategically. She said, what are you talking about? This is this, and this is this. And I said, this plan is based on life working accordingly to what you want. I said, I can just share with you in my short term here on the planet. I have yet to come across a day that went the way I thought it was going to go. Forget an entire plan. This looks like a 5-year lease. So you're saying for 5 years, for the next 5 years, for the next 5 years, my financial situation and all the things that I have to spend money on will align up accordingly. I will be employed at this job for 5 years. My groceries will be the same. Gas prices will not change, because it was, I mean, the budget was nice. And so her response was like, no, I have cushion. And she said, I have a miscellaneous, right? The miscellaneous had like 50 bucks. You know, she had an emergency fund. I think she was putting like $10, $15 in her emergency fund each month. So I rounded that up to 50. And I walked her through, let's take your 50 and your 50 and make it 100. So let's round that up to 100 of cushion for the next 5 years. And let's see what happens if you don't have PTO, how much money you will lose by missing 1 day of work. There was a discrepancy. Yeah, she was missing more than $100 for 1 day. So I had to let her know. So what you're saying is, not only is the life going to stay the same for the next 5 years, you're only going to miss less than 1 day of work over the next 5 years for this to work. So I like your example, Andrea, of bringing that up, and understanding that the reason behind the thinking and the goal setting in being strategic is the ability to, so let's go back to the positive thinking. If she were to say, there's no way I can do this, then she would not get a car. She did not listen to me. She went on and got the car, and the car did get repossessed a couple years later. She didn't make her 5 years. It did happen. And so what came out of that was negative mindset, right? This is not something, and I'm right. And so along the way, she did not see the self-fulfilling prophecy that her mindset was causing for her, right? Because you start seeing how it's not running in, and then you start saying it's not going to do this and that. And the funny thing about the mind is that your mind cannot distinguish between reality and make-believe. Your mind doesn't know the difference. So this is addressing the power of the mind request. I thought I covered it in the first point, but I feel like it wasn't honed in enough. So I'm circling back. The power of the mind is that it doesn't know. So you take stress. Your body, the chemical reaction to the things that happen to us, which causes stress. There is eustress and distress. We talked about this early on back in June. But your body doesn't know the difference. So stressed because you can't find your keys, and you found out that your child is hurt and you got to go pick them up. That stress, your body is responding. You feel stress in your body, not in your mind. You feel it in your body, and your body has to, the cortisol levels, the body has to process that. Your only son has found the woman of his dreams. You love her, she loves you. She is a welcome addition to your family, and they are about to get married, and you are on your way to the wedding. That's stressful. That's stressful because you're saying goodbye, you're cutting the cord, he's gone. Your body doesn't know the difference between the yay, I'm so happy for you, and the oh my goodness, I don't know if you're going to make it. It's just stress. Similarly, your mind does not know if you've ever had a dream and you've woken up from that dream. That's because your body is saying, yes, I am actually getting chased by those dogs, and they're getting closer and closer and closer. But because we are built in a way to protect ourselves, you never die in your dreams. they never catch you, your body's defense is to wake up because you can't see yourself be gone. So that part I don't have an explanation to. That is above my intellectual pay grade. And it's outside of the scope of this session. But the mind is extremely powerful. And the reason why it's so important to have a positive mindset is so that it helps to build resiliency. The reality is, if she would have taken my plan, she could have still ran into an issue, right? She could have still ran into an issue. I'm almost positive it wouldn't have been repossessed, but let's just say she would have still had some financial issues. But anyways, but the positive mindset says, hey, I can learn from this. I can apply what works and what doesn't work and all put it into the bucket of experience and move forward. So understanding why it's so important to have that and why we need to be intentional about that, moving over into Clifton's desire for why this is important. Because when you're setting goals, for you to set clear goals and run it all the way through, you can't have a defeatist mindset. Negative mindsets condition us to plan for the bare minimum. Now, anxiety might cause you to overplan. That's different than a negative mindset. A negative mindset really doesn't expect things to go well anyways. So you don't realize that you're actually just planning to survive, not thrive. When you get used to things not working well in your life, your plans they're not big enough. If you're trying to start a business, if you've had 4 or 5 businesses that are failed, you no longer ask for the $1 million. You just ask for $10,000 so you can get started, because you went to 3 other people and nobody's going to give you $1 million. So take the 10 and then try and parlay that into something else. So it has a ripple effect. And negative mindsets cloud goal setting, right? And when you have on the other side of that, you can cast a vision. You can tie goals to that vision. That boosts morale. That actually encourages other thoughts to come in. So let's take it out of a corporate setting, just take it into a marriage. Take it into a family situation. If you are talking to your spouse and have ability to say, hey, I think over the next year, we want to, and this is how I see us doing it. First, we're going to cut money here, and then we're going to do that. And when we get this credit card paid off, we're going to take that money and put it to the car. And if we do that, the car can get paid off within 6 months. And once we do that, we're going to start putting that into an emergency fund. If you had that conversation, your spouse is like, okay, yeah, it's thought out. And yeah, we can do that. And yeah, I can cut back. I don't have to do Starbucks every day. I can do it once a week, and I can trim here. And now it's a team. And then they give thoughts. Well, what about if we don't do that and we did this? That boosts morale. That's different than, yeah, we still owe more than what we're making. We still owe more than what we're making. And so, those are things that are difficult to do. And if we haven't touched this, I've done it in a different thing before. Hopefully you've heard of SMART goals. I'm not going to go too much into those tonight. Specific, measurable, actionable, relative, or realistic, and time sensitive. Your goals should have time frames on them. The difference between goals and dreams are plans, right? I used to tell my students all the time when I was a dean, I'm going to get my grades up. And I always say, how? I'm going to work harder. And I'm like, that's a dream. That's a dream. No, that's my goal. That's not a goal. You're going to work harder and study harder. That's not a goal. That's a dream. That's just, come back to me. I can help you make a plan, but that's not a plan. You want to get your grades up. That is, I'm going to come in after supper, give 30 minutes extra on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from now to now, looking over my equations to make sure I have a study part. That's a plan. I'm going to do this at start. I can do it. I'm not raising my D to an A. That's not realistic. I'm going to increase my percentage. I'm going to increase the homework I turn. So, those are things that you look at. If SMART goal is too long, another one that I have found helpful is by Mark Batterson, which is the 3 M's. And that means you need to make it measurable, meaningful, and maintainable. I think I got them out of order. Meaningful, measurable, and maintainable, right? So your goals need to be something bigger than yourself, right? It needs to be important to you, something that you strive for. It needs to be measurable, which you could apply the SMART thing or whatever, but you need to have some way of measuring it. And it needs to be maintainable, right? So that means realistic within your scope. So regardless of which one you want to do, those are extremely important. Any thoughts or comments on goal setting and strategic thinking? Any responses, something that comes to mind? All right. So lastly, before we get out of here, is taking responsibility. This also ties into why it's important. But taking responsibility, leadership begins with accountability, and shifting from blame to responsibility. So my question for the group is, think of a challenge you faced recently. How did taking responsibility or not taking responsibility impact the way you handled it? And what could you do differently? What would have changed if you would have done it differently? Doesn't mean you did something wrong. You could have done everything right and know that if you didn't, it would have messed up. So challenge you faced recently, you took responsibility, personal responsibility. And by doing that, it shaped how you handled that. And what would have changed if you didn't do that?
What came to mind for me was, I guess, parenting, and the responsibility of parenting, and then also how information is received, and so making sure that you're able to take responsibility when giving the instruction or giving the, whatever it is, the situation that you're trying to discipline, but recognizing that, they may have received it differently. And if they've received it differently, that I stop and pause and acknowledge that, even though it may not be on the focal point, but stop and pause and acknowledge that, because even as minute as it may seem to me, it is big to them. And so recognizing that that's important in the process, because it's not just, I said it, you do it, and we move on. We problem solve and we move on. Or we discipline and we move on. It's going through the journey of it. So there are times that, what you thought came out didn't come out. What you thought and you presented was not understood. And so in that process, learning how to take feedback in a way that helps you adjust that, as well as make it better for next time. Because this is an ongoing relationship. Unless you don't plan to be with your kids for the rest of your life, then yeah, it's definitely an ongoing relationship worth stopping to think and fixing it. So I definitely want to do that.
Yeah, great example. Thank you for trusting the group with that. That's a great example. You know, when we take accountability and responsibility for our actions and the outcomes, there are several things that come to mind. I remember a time when I first became a dean, and I inherited some staff, right? So my first year, there were assistant deans there. There was a gentleman there that was the brother of the former dean, and he got displaced during Katrina. So he was living in the dorm, and his brother left, headed out, and the school wasn't going to make him homeless just because they hired a new dean. So I inherited people. Never been a dean before, never worked in education before. My background is business sales. I came in, it's pre-week registration, people moving in, and he's sitting there. You have people, if you don't know, at boarding academies, high schoolers are moving in. They have, not furniture, but bags and belongings, personal items, trying to move in. Very similar to dropping them off at college, just not so intense. And so he was sitting there helping with that. And I remember sitting in, this is my first, and I'm talking to all the parents because I'm trying to get to know them. It's their first time to meet me. And one of the parents had an issue with him because he had an altercation with her son the year before. And so she said, I don't know if you know who you have in here, but this is not a person that should be around children. And I just wanted you to know. And he's sitting in there. She didn't ask to leave. She didn't say, can I have a moment? She just called him out in front of me. And he and I, outside of me moving in and us introducing ourselves to each other, we've had no conversations. I don't know him from Adam. So she's telling me all this that he did to his son and all this and that. And I said, well, I don't think that's appropriate to bring it up now. I said, but he's here and he's a part of my team and I stand behind him and I see how he can. And I basically went through that. And she said, well, I'll trust you, but I just wanted to let you know, I don't blah, 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 blah. And when she left, he was like, wow, you stood up for me and we haven't even, I said, oh, that's just how I lead. I'm the face of the team. I don't throw people under the bus. So I said, now me and you have to talk through what is the incident? How do we keep it from happening? What was the context? We need to have a discussion. We're not going to move forward blindly, but we're not going to have somebody come in and just tell us how to run the dorm. And so I said that in front of you so that, he goes, well, I thank you. I said, well, the way you can thank me is tell me what happened and make sure it won't happen again. And we went through that. But those are things that I think are important. And Lisette, to your point, even in the family, communication. When you look at relationships, I have told people when I've done some of those types of seminars and workshops, apology is good. Lying isn't. So don't apologize and say you're sorry when you're not. But saying sorry starts a dialogue. So if you're in a disagreement and you're not talking to your spouse or your child or your sibling, saying I'm sorry will prompt a response from them to start dialogue. And if you're like, well, I'm not sorry, there's something you're sorry for, which is a fracture in the relationship. So apologize for that. If you meant everything you said, then don't say, I'm sorry I said that. You would say, I'm sorry that what I said hurt you. Yeah, I meant what I said. I didn't mean to hurt you. Or I still stand. I feel that that's wrong. I don't want to do that. But I'm sorry that we're in a disagreement. I'm sorry we haven't talked in 2 days. I'm sorry you're frustrated. There's always something to apologize for. And so that's something you can do. So when we look at, taking responsibilities for actions and outcomes, when you start doing that, the people around you, going back to, hey, our mindset impacts other people start considering if they can do that. The other thing about taking responsibility is that, and this speaks to application for the individual that wanted application on how do I take this away. Just make sure I'm tying all these parts in. Practice the practice of not blaming people or external factors. So one simple thing you could do to become more accountable and practice accountability and become more responsible is making a daily habit when things go wrong of immediately asking yourself, what's within my control? There are times where you do everything right and it messes up. Some people call that life. Other people have different terms. I'm pretty basic. So just call it life. Life. You can do everything wrong and inappropriate and it work out. You can do everything right and it not work out. But there is always things that are within your control and things that are outside of your control. So an applicable, practical thing that you can take away from today is that when you're planning and working and leading people and working with others and having conversations, if the conversation goes wrong, if the outcomes don't happen, if you get that email where someone is offended, the proposal didn't get accepted, things went left when you thought they were supposed to go right, the first thing you ask yourself is, what is in my control? Not, should I have done it this way? Could I have been more, whatever your path takes you. The things that are in your control, or how you speak, what planning did you have? How much patience, how much compassion? These are things that are within your control. Somebody else saying no, somebody stealing, the car breaking down, those types of things are outside of your control. And the second part two to that for applicable thing is after you ask yourself that question, and this ties to us as parents, before you go in on your loved one, think about what was in their control. Give other people the same courtesy that you give yourself. But you won't be able to do that until you learn how to do it to yourself. If you're blaming yourself for things that are outside of your control, gas prices are too high, job market is not good, there's too toxic workplace. You're not in charge of the work culture. You're only in charge of how you respond to the work culture. So if you start saying, I can't be nice because other people aren't nice, no, that's not true. You can actually be nice and people can still treat you bad. You don't have to be bad because everyone else is bad, right? So going through that, and then once you master that or get a good handle on that, learn how to give other people what a lot of people call the benefit of the doubt. Before we just reprimand, rebuke, instruct, discipline, were there things outside of their control? I remember my father is a very particular individual. He is a gentleman that has a view on the world, and is very particular about how that view plays out for him and anyone else around him. He has a desired outcome for everyone's behavior. So when I was young and didn't have a car and staying with him, I asked to use his vehicle. And when I had that vehicle, it was winter, it's in Ohio, and I drove that vehicle to work. I did not park the vehicle in the parking lot of the restaurant because the parking lot was not shoveled. It had ice, it had not been salted. And I did not want people to slide into the car. So I parked it in an adjacent parking lot of an office building that in the evening, it was empty. I went into work and came back out, and where I parked it, the tree had fallen because of the ice, and it ripped open the top on the back of his Jeep. It was a soft top on a Jeep. Tree went. The only thing that could have happened other than the tree was a meteor fell on the car, because I made the right decision to keep it right. When I brought the Jeep home and the top was split open or whatever, I said, hey, he said, hey, son. And I said, yeah, I parked the Jeep in a different parking lot that was paved and salted and clean. And a tree fell into the thing and ripped open the back. And so at this point, I'm ready to receive whatever. I don't have any explanation. Just give it to me. Whatever the punishment, I said, whatever lecture ideas you have, just lay it on. And so he, at that moment, and I believe it's the only moment at that time that he was able to see this was something outside of my son's control. He could see it on my face. I did everything that I knew to do to take care of your freaking belongings in a way that you would appreciate. I navigated all the steps. He could see it on my face. And so he was able to recognize that, which was not normal. But he was able to do that. So I am reminded of that. And I leave you with that message that when you're dealing with loved ones, after you learn how to stop blaming for yourself and outside factors and, well, there's a Republican in the office, or there's a Democrat in the office, or, my spouse never listens to me, or my boss doesn't respect me. Once you learn how to stop doing that and just choose how you can respond, the next thing that you can apply is do the same thing for other people. So, all right. When you take ownership, that creates a path for personal growth. And it sets a powerful example for people around you. So lastly, I'll close with this. Just remember that leadership starts with the way we think. And when we change our thinking, we change our decisions, our actions, and ultimately our results. But all of this starts from the inside out. And when we start from the inside, that will have an impact on the people around us. And then it feeds into something that I wholeheartedly believe in, and that is you can change the world. Each individual can change the world, because if you change your world, the entire world is changed. So if you change the way you think and you behave differently, everyone that associates with you will have to interact with that different type of thought. And if it's positive, you're actually doing your part to make the world a better place. Appreciate all your comments. Any final thoughts, takeaways, something you learned, something you appreciated?
Could you put the conclusion slide up one more time?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments, considerations, takeaways, something you share with someone else, something you're glad you heard?
I liked the accountability tips. That is something I will keep in mind going forward. I don't always bear that in mind, but I'll be intentional about that.
Good, good, good. Gave you something to consider. That's good. That's good. Anyone else?
I like the presentation in general, but the one thing that stood out to me was the complexity of leadership. How it's not just a person that thinks that they're a leader. They have to act out these things. And being real, but having that respect for others is, you know, important so that you can receive other people for who they are. So it's more complex is my point than just having, you know, like I'm an outgoing person or I can, you know, get a group together. It's like, well, no, that's great that you have those skills, but now what? What are you doing with that? There has to be more involved. So anyway, that's what came to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be a leader, all you need is somebody following you. So it's not complex at all to just be a leader. As long as you have somebody following you, a leader. To lead to outcomes is extremely complex. Yeah. One might say to be a good leader is extremely complex. But yeah, there's the debate on are leaders born or made? Both. But to be a leader, you just need someone walking behind you. you just need a follower, and that makes you a leader. But you can lead somebody into doing nothing. You sit on the couch every day, they sit beside you on the couch every day. You're a leader. Rah, rah. Here's your certificate. But that is very different than leading somebody to a specific outcome, which takes effort and intentionality. And then the next level is leading someone to a shared outcome. Because it's easier to lead someone to your desired outcome than it is to lead a group of people to a collective desired outcome. Then you start getting into full-blown professional development workshops, which is not the intent of these Wednesday night sessions. Those are not things that are covered in 60 minutes with questions and answers and getting comments from people and telling stories. That's not that training. That takes a lot of time and effort. But to get there, hopefully we have shared that you can start with something as simple as leading yourself and understanding who you are in different situations and making sure that you are very intentional about having a positive mindset. How you think changes what you do. You can't do something you don't think. You can't. You can't be better if you don't think you can be better. You can't run faster if you don't think you can run faster. You can't. You can't make money if you don't think you can make money. Right? And the mind cannot process the negative. So you can't flip that coin around. So don't think of negative thoughts. That's exactly what you're going to think of. Your mind can't process the negative. So since your mind has to process positive things that are tangible, then you might as well make those tangible things positive. So there you have it. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. We have, I think, just 2 more weeks or 1 more week. And our summer series will conclude. I think I have a calendar close by. What is today? The 23rd, 21st? Oh, my calendar is in April of next year. So yeah, that's not helpful. There we go. So we have 1 more week. We have one more week. All right. And so next week we will wrap up with the idea of the difference between informed and responsive. So as a leader, there's in different professional settings, there's a lot of talk about being culturally informed, trauma informed, culturally informed. And I hope to have a presentation that will encourage you to move. Informed is good. This is not a bad thing. Informed is good. But we got enough information. Hopefully we can encourage you to be responsive, being culturally responsive and being trauma responsive. Once you're aware that someone is suffering from trauma, how do you respond to that person? How do you, do you just walk away, or how can you engage as a leader? The people on your team, the people that are following you, they come from a different background. They have different histories. And so how do you respond to that with care and compassion and empathy, and still move towards outcomes. So that'll be how we wrap up next week. Until then, you guys have a good week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.